To our Bhagavad Gita reading and discussion tonight. My name is Swami Devarshi, and we will begin with a prayer. Heavenly Father, Divine Mother, Friend, Beloved God, Jesus Christ, Babaji Krishna, Lahiri Mahashaya, Swami Shri Yukteswarji, Beloved Guru, Paramahansa Yoganandaji, saints of all religions, we humbly bow at thy feet. O great ones, guide our lives, guide our thoughts, guide our actions. Help us to attune our consciousness to your great expanded consciousness. Help us to find final freedom. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Well, this evening the topic is the Guru, our supreme refuge. And we're on chapter 13, stanzas 24 and 25. And this is a good evening for this topic. Last night we had a ceremony honoring the 3-year anniversary of our teacher Swami Kriyanandaji leaving the body 3 years ago. And his life was really defined by his discipleship to his Guru, Paramahansa Yogananda, and also by his deep love and devotion for God and the Guru. And that is also part of one of the stanzas this evening. Swamiji, even I think, would define his life in those terms of being a disciple of a great master. When he met Yoganandaji, the very first words he said to him are, "I want to be your disciple." And when Swamiji left the body, I can imagine that his very last thought was also of the Guru and laying his life down at the Guru's feet. His whole life was dedicated to serving the Guru in thought also, not just in action, because really true deep discipleship and attunement is something that's interior. It's of the heart, it's of the feelings, and then by extension, the thoughts and the mind. The first is on the level of deep feeling. Yoganandaji often said that reason follows feeling. And so one must change the feelings of the heart first if one wants to start changing their thoughts. And when one has a deep, sincere yearning and love for God and that deep love for the Guru, then those thoughts naturally arise, those sanctifying thoughts of God and Guru. And so these two things are very closely intertwined. And again, this was really almost Swami Kriyanandaji's life in a way. It was in a nutshell. So, chapter 13, stanza 24 of the Gita, the Lord says, "To behold the self in the self, the purified ego, by the self, the clarified mind. Some seekers follow the path of meditation, some that of knowledge, and some the path of selfless activity." And I'm going to read Swami Kriyanandaji's the beginning of his commentary here, because he takes a very different perspective on it. And very unusually, he addresses, rather than directly those 3 ways of finding truth and finding oneself, he addresses what is not spoken of there by Krishna. And Swamiji writes, "One may ask, why has Krishna not mentioned also the path of bhakti yoga, devotion, in this particular stanza? The truth is that without devotion, no other path will work. Krishna frequently in the Gita stresses the importance of devotion. In this chapter he is emphasizing the need to wage inner war in the cause of truth. Hence, the repeated references to Kshetra and to Kurukshetra, symbol of the struggle involved in advancing spiritually. Whether meditating, discriminating, or acting, a devotional attitude must underlie everything one does. Devotion is the bowstring that shoots the arrow to its mark. Without it, all spiritual effort is merely a gathering of good karma. It cannot bestow liberation." And also without devotion, one can really not succeed in any endeavor. That sounds like a bold statement and maybe an exaggeration, but in fact, devotion it is that awakens strength of the heart. It's what gives one courage and the inner strength to fight the battle of life, to fight any battle. Success in any endeavor really requires strength of heart. It requires passion towards whatever you are doing, even in worldly success. If you are apathetic about what it is you're trying to do, your chances of success are almost close to zero. You may find accidental success from some good karma perhaps. But to succeed at any endeavor, you must have strong feelings about what it is that you're doing. And devotion especially awakens the courage that is required on the spiritual path. Yoganandaji's commentaries on the Gita, he gave a very, very inward interpretation. Even of the 5 Pandavas, he related each one to one of the chakras and the qualities of those chakras. For example, Yudhishthira was the throat chakra, which is calmness and dispassion, and also expansion. And the heart chakra is exemplified and represented by Bhima, who is the courageous one. He has the heart and the courage, and when they need, in the great battle of Kurukshetra, when they need to defeat a very difficult foe, an enemy who's strong, they call him Bhima because he was the strongest, the most courageous, and he was also deeply devoted. He was also had, interestingly, I wouldn't say the negative side of the heart chakra, but when the heart chakra is restless and the energy is flowing outward rather than flowing inward and up the spine, it can also devolve into emotion. And of course, Bhima was the emotional one. When he was not calm and when he was not centered, emotions got the best of him, and he would get a little bit angry and upset and start killing a bunch of people as a result of it. But that heart quality is what gives one the strength for the spiritual path. What Paramhansa Yoganandaji said, he said, it is extremely necessary to cultivate that unceasing devotion for God. He who has devotion never falls, because God knows that devotee wants to be rescued, and no matter how many times that devotee falls, God picks him up. And so, very often Yoganandaji said there are many rules on the spiritual path, but there's really only one rule that, in a sense, rules over them all, and that is the essential need for deep devotion and yearning for God. And again, that gives one the great courage and the energy and the strength to really fight many, many difficult inner battles on the spiritual path. Battles of things like discouragement and stumbling and failure, which all souls on their way back to God, if they really are trying to make a great effort, you will fall short of success sometimes. One year I had as my motto that year was, if I did not fail that year, then it's only because I was not setting the bar high enough. I was not aiming high enough. Because if you succeed at everything you try to do, either you're a perfected master already, or you are not aiming high enough. You're settling for lower and easy victories. And so the warrior on the spiritual path needs that great courage, that energy of the heart, that passion to keep fighting, to keep overcoming limitations and obstacles. So what do we do when we're not feeling that heart's quality and that natural devotion? The great ones have taught us, as Swamiji did and Yoganandaji, pray for devotion. It's very simple. Go to God and say, Divine Mother, awaken this feeling in my heart. It's something that is natural and native to everyone. Some people think, oh, I don't have devotion, I'm not a devotional sort of person. But in fact, we were born with that. We were born with a deep desire to know God, to love God, to give, to serve. And then it's over time is either beaten out of us by the world or by our own desires pulling it away from us. But in fact, it is part of our natural divine inheritance. Swami Sri Yukteswarji, a great saint of wisdom, he called it the heart's natural love. And that very simply is what it is. And so all we have to do is uncover it, reawaken it, feed it, because anything we feed in our consciousness, either bad, negative, or good, positive, anything we feed will start to grow. And so we feed it through activities, through chanting, through prayer, through many, many different means. In the end, the way Swamiji put it, which has always been close to my own experience, he says, when you meditate, do so with an attitude of self-giving, with no thought of any reward, only of God's pleasure. Try to develop the kind of love that says, I want him now, but if it is his will, I'm willing to wait forever. The more you offer yourself up to him in that way, the more his love will be able to flow through you. This, in a way, relates to an expression we have in America, which has to do with you're boiling water in a pot. And the expression is that a watched pot never boils. So if you're always watching it, waiting for it to boil, it never does. And as soon as you turn away, that's when it seems to suddenly start boiling over. And so it's the same with our relationship to the divine in meditation. If we are always looking for results, always wanting results, in a way it almost drives the results away by our own self-involvement, in our contraction of thinking, I want, I want, I want. And instead, if we think in terms of I give, I give, I give to the Lord, our devotion, our love, without looking for results, then that pot boils over. It starts giving results much, much more quickly. So this is the type of devotion we're talking about. It is an unconditional self-offering and self-giving without thinking of what we are getting out of it. And naturally, results inevitably come when we have that attitude. Now the next stanza gets directly into the Guru, and we will talk about the Guru-disciple relationship. Chapter 13, stanza 25. Some men, ignorant of these three paths, heed the instructions of their Guru, accepting what he teaches as their supreme refuge. They approach the truth worshipfully and thus cross over the river of death. And so the Lord Krishna here is saying that even if you're ignorant of the great spiritual truth and laws, if you have the Guru and follow the Guru, you will find freedom very, very quickly. And that in some ways I think is the most direct and quick way to divine freedom. Adi Shankara said about the blessing of having a divine Guru, he wrote, no known comparison exists in the three worlds for a true Guru. If the philosopher's stone be assumed as truly such, it can only turn iron into gold, not into another philosopher's stone. The venerated teacher, on the other hand, creates equality with himself in the disciple that takes refuge at his feet. The Guru is therefore peerless, nay, transcendental. And so, having a true divine Guru is the greatest blessing one can have in the three worlds, because it is the quickest and direct way to divine freedom. And essentially, as Yoganandaji would tell his disciples, he would tell them that Divine Mother sent me to pilot you out of the clouds of delusion. And so, of course, the Guru comes from God to free us. And I think it's technically maybe is not right to see the Guru as God, but in fact it is, because the Guru is the doorway to God. The Guru is one with God, and it is the way for us to find divine freedom. Paramahansa Yogananda said about the importance of the Guru on any spiritual path, on any quest for divine freedom. He said that true success and liberation depends 25% on our effort, which is really 100% of our effort, but 25% of the results come from our effort. 25% the Guru's effort on our behalf. 50% is the grace of God. And Swamiji often pointed out that even the 50% that is the grace of God comes through the Guru. So you could say truthfully that the Guru is responsible for 75% of our freedom. We're responsible for just the 25% of our effort. I tell a story often that I had a very good example of how this works, because it's not the Guru doing it for us. In a sense, really, we are doing it with the Guru. It's a joint effort. We cooperate with the Guru, we work with the Guru, we do what he asks, we serve the Guru, we also give. It's not just taking. I was on pilgrimage many years ago, and I was in Rishikesh, and I was meditating by the banks of the Ganges very early in the morning with a friend of mine, and we were practicing our Kriya Yoga meditation. And when we finished, it was very beautiful, remote, not a soul around, which is very unusual there in Rishikesh. I went out into the river to bathe, and I got about maybe 15, 20 feet out into the water, not very deep, and very calm, still water. And I suddenly stepped into some quicksand. And I wasn't afraid or alarmed because I've been in quicksand previously, and I know how it works, and it very rarely causes people's death, especially if you don't panic. So I remained calm, and I even was laughing at the divine playing with me again, like a cat with a mouse. And I reached solid ground through the quicksand, and the quicksand was up to my thigh. Water was up to about my chest, but there was no way I could move. The quicksand, sometimes even up to your ankles, you cannot pull yourself out, and there was no way I could pull myself out. And in a way, this represented the quicksand of delusion, of our desires, of our attachments, of our karmas. And try as I might, there was no way I could free myself from that karma with all the effort in the world. And that's really, in a way, that's what brings many people to God, when they realize, I can't do this by myself. And one prays to God and asks for a guru to come and free me from the quicksand. Fortunately, my friend Vidura was there, representing the guru in this analogy. And he came over, and I told him where to stand on the solid ground before the quicksand. And it took him grabbing my arm, and it took him pulling, it took me pushing with all my effort, it took us working together and cooperating to finally get me out of that quicksand. And so this, in a good way, describes the guru-disciple relationship, of how we get out of the quicksand of our own delusions, karmas, desires, attachments, and misunderstandings. We work with the guru closely, we cooperate with him, we keep him very, very near, right next to us, holding on to us. We hold on to the guru, we don't ever let go of the guru. And if we work with the guru in that way, he'll take care of 75% of the power and the energy and what is needed to free us. And if I had just laid my arm out and said, Guruji, I'm ready, free me, without any effort, he would have pulled on me, my friend, and I would still be stuck because he would not have been able to pull me out. Again, it took my full effort, it took my cooperation, it took my openness and receptivity to recognizing that I needed the help of the Guru. There's a very interesting and very funny thing that happens in the United States very often. It's almost a stereotype, but because I've seen this happen, I think it's more than a stereotype, where a couple, man and woman, are driving, and they get lost. And the man never wants to ask for directions because he's a little too proud. He won't admit he's lost, and he doesn't want the help, and he thinks he can do it by himself. And the woman tends to, let's just stop and ask for directions, and the man resists it. And it's a stereotype, but again, I've seen it happen many times. This is, I think, one reason why you tend to see more women coming onto the spiritual path, because there's more of a willingness to ask for help, ask for guidance. And the sort of the strong male ego, and again, this is generalizations, it's not universal, but that aspect or type of ego doesn't either want to admit that it's lost, or it doesn't want to ask for help. And that's what's required on the spiritual path, is to admit and understand that we're lost, recognize it, and have the humility to go to God and say, okay, I need your help. Please send me a guru or a teacher to pilot me out of the clouds of delusion. Now, the help that the guru gives is much more than just teaching philosophy and these things. This reading from the Gita says that some men ignorant of those three paths. So you can be ignorant of those paths, but the guru can still guide you and pilot you out. There's a beautiful story that we've heard many times from Swami Kriyanandaji of a man who came to his guru's ashram. He recognized his guru and he came to the guru's ashram. And he wanted the teachings, these very wise teachings of meditation, that the Guru would give to his disciples. And when he came, the Guru said, right now I just want you to carry the firewood, carry water into the ashram, and just practice seva in that way. The time for teachings will come, and just serve in this way. And the disciple did. He was a very true and good disciple. And he did that for a long time. And he would start to feel sometimes, he would see the others going to the Guru's home and where he lived and giving these teachings. And whenever he checked with the Guru said, no, keep carrying the wood and carrying the water. And then one day, this disciple was picking up some water, and he looked in the water and was very calm. And there was a reflection there, and he looked in the reflection, and he saw himself. And he looked at himself, and his hair, without him knowing it, had turned gray. That's how long he had been doing this seva for his Guru. And he got very discouraged. He realized that he'd been doing this for many, many years, that he'd spent most of his life just carrying firewood and water. And he started to get very sad. And in fact, he started to weep. He felt so sad. And as the first tear dropped from his cheek, suddenly he noticed the Guru rushing up to him, catching the tear in his hand. And he said to the disciple, do you realize that if the tears of such a great soul as yourself were to touch the ground, there would be drought and famine for 7 years in this land here? And so the story points out that it's not about just getting the intellectual wisdom teachings. It's about offering oneself in service, devotion, in giving. And when one does that sincerely over the course of a lifetime, the Guru enters the disciple's heart, the Guru enters the disciple's consciousness, and changes him on a very, very deep level from the inside out. Not because of thoughts and ideas, but because of consciousness, vibration, and the grace of the Guru. This is the grace of the Guru that is always trying to enter us and help us. The only thing is that we, through our either ignorance or defensiveness or whatever reason, we tend to drive it away or keep it away. And that grace is always there. Divine grace is always there, ready to help us. We just have to invite it in and open our hearts to receive it. And in a way, the whole spiritual path can be condensed down to how much and whether we invite and open and receive through all these ways the help, the grace of the Divine Guru. You'll see, interestingly, this beautiful book, Autobiography of a Yogi, by Paramhansa Yoganandaji. People read that book, and it's very interesting to me because how many millions of people have read that book? How few have become disciples of Yoganandaji from that book? And what I find interesting about that is, and I'm not surprised, but I found and discovered that after reading that book several times, I realized that that book is almost entirely about the Guru-disciple relationship. The stories in that book, the longest chapters are that very poignant time between Yoganandaji and his Guru. The very first sentence in the book is about the Guru-disciple relationship. The very last sentence in the book alludes to the Guru-disciple relationship. The most powerful stories in that book directly relate to it. The most interesting and powerful moment in that book is when Yoganandaji, his heart's lifelong search and desire is fulfilled, when he has the experience of samadhi. And in that story, he receives it from the Guru. You remember he left the Guru's ashram to find God in the Himalayas, is the way Yoganandaji put it. And he was away for a long time, much longer than that book implies. And when he came back, part of that story, you'll remember he visited the sleepless saint, Ram Gopal Muzumdar. And Yoganandaji asked this saint, who was a great master, he asked him, will you give me samadhi? And the saint said, no, I cannot do that. Only your Guru can give you that. And then he touched Yoganandaji and gave him a blessing, a healing of a back problem he had, but he also experienced divine light and lightning all night long. But then he went back to the Guru's ashram, to Sri Yukteswarji, And very soon after, just a few days after he was there, he was meditating. And this is a good story for all of us to remember. He was meditating very restlessly. I think he said, like leaves blowing around in the wind. And Sri Yukteswarji called him. And because he was pretending to meditate, he wasn't really meditating. He was silent and he ignored the Guru's call. And the Guru called again, Mukunda, come down. And Mukunda Yoganandaji said, Sir, I'm meditating. And finally the Guru called a third time. He said, Mukunda, get down here. I know how you are meditating. And very sheepishly, the disciple went to the Guru, bowed to him. And at that moment, Sri Yukteswarji touched Yoganandaji on the heart center. Isn't it interesting that that's where the Guru enters, is at the heart center. He didn't touch him here at the point between the eyebrows. He touched him on the heart. And Sri Yukteswarji's grace and blessings entered the heart because the disciple was ready, was receptive, invited him in. And at that moment, Yoganandaji had the divine experience of samadhi, of cosmic consciousness. So even that comes through the Guru, but even every step along the way to that point of final ultimate freedom comes through the help and the grace of the Guru. Now, Swami Kriyanandaji, coming back to his life, his whole life was absolutely dedicated to loving and serving the Guru. Somebody asked him once to what cause he gave to his divine freedom and the divine bliss that he always felt near the end of his life. And he gave all the credit to three things that are closely related. He said it was because of Guru Bhakti, Guru Seva, and meditation. Devotion to the Guru, service to the Guru, and meditation, which Yoganandaji even described as Guru-given meditation, when it is true and deep meditation. And so his whole life, Swamiji's, was a greater, deeper, never-ending attunement to the Guru. And this is something that we can all do. It's not, Swamiji always pointed out that this deep discipleship attunement, acting as the Guru's channel of blessings to others, to family, to friends, to the world, is something that everybody can do, and something that every disciple almost has a duty to do, to be able to give and share the Guru's blessings with others. And when one does this, one finds freedom, more and more over the years, from great delusions, from great temptations, from discouragement, and finally, ultimately, the Guru carries us home over the course of a lifetime with our own receptivity and openness to the Guru's help. I asked Swamiji one time about how to feel the type of joy I would feel in his presence. And I asked him, I was here in Gurgaon, and I was leaving for America, and I asked him, I'm going back to America, and I want to feel the same joy and freedom inwardly that I feel when I'm sitting at your feet. How do I do that? And he said very simply, mentally chant as much as you can during the day, Om Guru, Om Guru, Om Guru. He said when you chant that, you will start to feel more and more freedom, more and more joy. You will start to feel more and more of a desire for God, more and more of a love for God. Because, of course, we attune ourselves to the consciousness of the Guru's grace, and he changes us in those very ways. Now, the true attunement to the Guru and the true closeness to the Guru is inward. It is not outward. People ask very often, oh, the Guru is not in the body. But in fact, when the Guru was in the body, many people were confused because they saw a personality. They saw someone eating food, and they saw someone that kind of looked like them and acted like them. And really the true attunement and openness to the power of a God-realized master is inward. It really almost has nothing to do with that physical proximity or the Guru even being in the body. Swamiji said about this, it should be pointed out that even while the beloved Guru was here in the flesh, most of the help he gave was from the spiritual side. A certain disciple was always taking pictures of Master. One day the Master said to him, "Learn to know me in meditation. You will know me much better then." Sister Gyanamata is the most advanced woman disciple. was never disturbed or lonely by Master's absences, or over-elated by his physical presence. When other devotees were excitedly crying, "Master is coming, Master is coming," she would quietly say, "He is always with me," and with peaceful joy in her eyes. And so, with Swami Kriyanandaji having left the body, try to avoid catching yourself saying, "Oh, he's not here anymore, I miss him, he's far away." Try to realize that he is right here. To those, as Yoganandaji said, to those who think me near, I will be near. And all we have to do to bring the Guru very close, in very close proximity to us, even inside of us, in our hearts, is simply with devotion, with sincerity, pray to the Guru, pray to the Great Ones. Come to me, be with me always, change me, bring me home. And that prayer will be answered, because that is the job that they joyfully took on, is to come help us and to come free us. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti.